One of my favourite cartoon characters is Snoopy. I love the way he sits and lies on his kennel and contemplates the great things of life. So when I thought about compassion, my mind immediately went to one of the cartoon strips where he's lying there and he says, "I really understand and I really appreciate how one should love one's neighbour as one loves oneself. The only trouble is the people next door, I can't stand them." And this, in a way, is one of the challenges of how to interpret a really good idea. We all, I think, believe in compassion. If you look at all the world religions, all the main world religions, you'll find within them some teaching concerning compassion. So in Judaism, we have from our Torah that you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. And within Jewish teachings, the rabbinic teachings, we have Hillel, who taught that you shouldn't do to others what you don't like being done to yourself. And all the main religions have similar teachings. And again, within Judaism, we have a teaching about God, who is called the compassionate one, Harachaman. After all, how could the world exist without God being compassionate? And we, as taught within the Torah, that we are made in the image of God, so we too have to be compassionate. But what does it mean? How does it impact on our everyday life? Sometimes, of course, being compassionate can produce feelings within us that are very difficult to control. I know there are many times when I've gone and conducted a funeral, or when I have been sitting with the bereaved or with people who are dying, and I am overwhelmed by the sadness, by the difficulty, the challenge that is there for the family, for the person. And I'm touched so that tears come to my eyes. And yet, if I just allowed myself to be overwhelmed by these feelings, I wouldn't be doing my job, because I have to actually be there for them and make sure that things, that rituals happen, that practicalities are seen to. And yet, on the other hand, if I didn't feel this compassion, then I feel that it would be time for me to hang up my robe and give up being a rabbi. And these same feelings are there for all of us as we face the world. Who can not be touched by compassion when we see the terrible horrors of the results of war, or famine, or earthquakes, or tsunamis? I know some people who say, well, you know, there's just so much out there, I can't do anything, I'm not going to even begin to try. And there are some charity workers who call this compassion fatigue. There are others who feel they can't confront compassion anymore. And so they turn off the television and don't watch. In Judaism, though, we tend to always say there has to be a middle way. You have to, of course, be aware of the needs of others, but you have to be aware in such a way that you can carry on with your life and be of help to people. So part of compassion has to be an understanding of what makes people tick. And of course you can't do that unless you understand yourself a bit more. And there's a lovely rabbinic interpretation of the beginnings of creation, which says that when God created the world, God thought that it would be best to create the world only with the divine attribute of justice. Because after all, God is just, therefore there should be justice throughout the world. And then God looked to the future and realized if the world was created just with justice, the world couldn't exist. So God thought, no, I'm going to create the world just with compassion. And then God looked to the future and realized that, in fact, if the world is just filled with compassion, then there would be anarchy and chaos. There has to be limits to all things. The rabbis describe this as